Yes, welcome everyone back to another episode of 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest. Alongside me from KSHB 41 is our good friend Nick Jacobs, also 40-time enthusiast from the NFL Combine. Nick Jacobs, that's your guy.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's a special week with the 40 times. So, I mean, don't think I wasn't looking at what every wide receiver was doing to see who kind of really separated themselves and put themselves in good territory speed-wise.
I myself am an arm length enthusiast, Nick. That's what I'm watching for, especially those offensive linemen, man.
Oh, yes, when it comes to offensive lineman, the arm length does play a big decision in what the Chiefs may or may not do, especially at tackle. So, yes, that is another key indicator on that. And on defensive line, the ability to change direction and some of in either the shuttle or three cone, one of the two, I can't remember, but it's one of those two. And then broad jump really tells you a lot about defensive ends and defensive linemen and kind of what their explosiveness is just off a snap or just off an initiation. So, I mean, yeah, there are numbers that give you indicators on each and every player that in different positions. Because, like, you're not necessarily going to look at a broad jump as big for, you don't necessarily need it for running back as much as you probably do for defensive linemen, defensive ends, even offensive tackles, because it tells you how much explosiveness they have in their lower body or vertical, or the vertical leap that tells you a lot, or jump that tells you a lot too. So I mean, yes, there are key indicators with each and everything, and some guys are separating themselves athletically without the shoulder pads and helmet, but there's a reason why you're looking at those specific drills for those guys.
And we're gonna, down the road when we're gonna get into RAS scores and everything else you can possibly imagine with the prospects coming out for the combine. But today we are gonna hit free agency and really look at, the Chiefs' needs and what possibilities might be out there for Brett Veach once he goes shopping next week. But we can't really talk about that, Nick, without talking about the Chiefs trying to take care of their own in-house
Yeah.
free agents and figuring out what they're going to do. And off the top, I mean, let's take a look at the salary cap because that's the key area. And we don't have the official numbers for the 2024 season from the NFLPA. If you listen to me and Nick, I mean, those are the numbers that we're always going to refer to because that's the absolute official number.
Right.
The other places like Over the Cap, Spotrac do a great job of estimating, but as you can tell, even by the fact that they never agree, it's an estimate and it's a really good estimate. But the NFLPA numbers are always the most accurate, but they are a lagging indicator, if you will, because we don't usually get them until a few days after free agency starts. They don't do a look aheads or anything like that, like the other sites do. So right now, Over the Cap has the Chiefs without the tag being used at like 23.2 million. Spotrac has the Chiefs at 29, almost 29.5 million. So there technically is some money, and obviously there's money that the Chiefs could free up, with some restructures. Mahomes alone, depending on how much they wanted to restructure him, could free up almost 36 million. So
Mhm.
salary cap constraints aren't necessarily a huge problem for this team, but the one looming question in short term about how much cap space they might have is the L'Jarius Sneed, Chris Jones question. And probably important as we sit here on Sunday, that as we're recording this, that Chiefs have said they're going to place the franchise tag essentially on L'Jarius Sneed, but they haven't yet. So everybody's kind of concluding that, but we've still got almost 48 hours, a little over 48 hours, for the Chiefs to actually decide whether or not they're going to do that. And they've essentially had L'Jarius Sneed on the market for the last week, Nick.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I still think it's going to happen by Tuesday at that deadline just because you need that in place, but I think they want to give him, his agent, and themselves every opportunity to not have to use that and make it more of a last resort, but also show him that respect. Because here's the thing, I felt like they showed him respect by saying, "Hey, you have permission to go seek a trade and go find something," and gave him that ability to go talk to other teams, see what their number is, and in all honesty, let other teams do the work for them in terms of numbers, so that the Chiefs can honestly just match it, and in all honesty, it's less of a headache in terms of trying to find that balance between injury guarantee, which is going to be key with L'Jarius Sneed. How much does he get off an injury guarantee? How much does he get signing bonus wise? What is the base that he is after, or average per year, sorry. And you're going to put a lot of that into the base, not all of it. But what's that average per year that they are looking at, and what's the overall guarantee they're looking at? However, they want to do the fine print from injury guarantee or just contract guarantee and all that type of stuff. And our team's offering a 3 year or 4 year, or is somebody having to do a 5 year because they want to have a certain amount of space? And then the Chiefs can kind of gauge off that. But in my opinion, it's smart business to do with to show players that level of respect to where, hey, you can test the market, see what's out there, and then we'll try to all collectively work something out with the tag in that. And then obviously Chris Jones is going to be something similar in that regard. Um, but yeah, with going back to Legarius, I think there will be specific market out there for him, and I think it's going to include one or two teams. For me personally, I kind of wonder if it'll be the. I think the Falcons will probably still be involved. Eagles and Cardinals, I'm kind of 50-50 on, but I think like if anybody's going to make that swing and not care, I think it's going to be more the Falcons than it will be anybody else.
Yeah, and if you're the Chiefs, you would prefer that it's somebody who's got a top 50 pick.
Mm.
We've talked about the trade value before. I would be stunned if the Chiefs were able to get a first rounder for L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, second round absolutely seems to be the going market rate. And I think if the Chiefs, if you can get even a second pick out of that, in addition to that, that'd be fabulous. But in order to do that, you really need two teams in a bidding war. I mean, that's how the Chiefs were able to get that haul for Tyreek Hill. They were able to get the New York Jets interested, and that drove up, what they could get from Miami. So, both for L'Jarius and the Chiefs, you need multiple teams to get interested. And that's, I think, going to be the challenge. I mean, you're right. I mean, the Chiefs letting L'Jarius, test the market essentially this past week it probably helps them too in their regards for trying to actually either whether it's they're going to trade Legarius or if they want to keep him, because that was the word that I kind of heard in Indianapolis was just that there was the Chiefs and Legarius were not terribly close, and there was some perception that Legarius might have a different view of the market than is out there. So letting him kind of test it and get some values from other teams, I mean, if he stays in Kansas City, that's probably going to be a key reason why, was that he was able to test the market and find out what other teams were willing to pay and then compare it to what he could get in Kansas City.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right on that fact, and that's part of that. That's a big part of the Baltimore Ravens strategy over the past 20 plus years is to, hey, let them see what the market actually is, and then they'll most of them realize, oh, the Ravens were offering fair market value. So this strategy is kind of the Baltimore Ravens strategy. Doesn't mean it's exclusive to them. It's just there's certain teams that approach how to pay their players in different ways. Just like I talked about with the Ravens being that way, the Eagles when they're Harry Roseman and whenever Andy Reid was there, they like to pay players earlier than what the contract is. They like you and I have talked about on other shows. You don't they want to do it a year earlier than a year late. And get into that final year of it. I mean, it's going to happen sometimes. And guess what? The Eagles didn't have Super Bowls that they were winning on a regular basis, or a quarterback that costs as much as Mahomes to be able, they had more flexibility to be able to do that. So, like, you're starting to come up with the Chiefs way, and it honestly, I think it involves a little Eagles, a little Ravens, and a little Brett Veach's own strategy in between with what he has to work with in terms of circumstances with what he's doing overall. But yeah, with Sneed, something if I were in their shoes and they do end up seeing what the trade market offers, the number one thing, if there's a certain player the Chiefs covet more than anything else, then I think they need to see, is there a possibility to swap ones to where the other team keeps a one, but the Chiefs get the positioning, and is the other team okay with that? With that, and if the Chiefs are able to get somewhere into that, 10 to 19 range, the Falcons have the eighth overall pick, the Eagles wouldn't give as much. So in that regard, then that may be where, if you did something with the Eagles hypothetically, then are they willing to give you 22 for 32 or wherever they're at? And then are they willing to give you a second, or are they willing to give you a third or fourth or something? And then you have ammo to be able to move up into that range if you're wanting an offensive tackle. who's probably, are probably going to be in the top 20. And if they're by some miracle, the Falcons want to give you the chance to get in striking distance of Joe Alt, then you definitely do that because Joe Alt's probably going somewhere between 5 to 7, 5 to 8 range. So like that kind of puts you in that striking distance. So in in the scheme of it, or if there's a certain wide receiver who ran an impressive 40 that you're really enamored with, you may not be able to stand pat at 32 anymore. So I mean, there's a lot of opportunities there, especially wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive lineman, depending what happens with Chris Jones, to where losing Sneed is going to be unfortunate. It would be a bummer, but fingers crossed. It looks like Dave Merritt's potentially coming back at this point since the Niners went in a different direction. And so you have a little bit more flexibility in terms of the development at defensive backs because you have the guy who can turn most defensive backs into gold with the way he coaches an entire season with them.
You mentioned the Eagles way, and the obviously the Eagles way under Andy Reid, one of them was you never sign anybody after 30, and you never committed money to anybody past 30. Chris Jones is in that category, and I mean, and all evidence is that the Chiefs will probably not tag Chris Jones, even if something developed with Legarius, and if in the next 48 hours and they're able to get something done before the tag deadline. It still seems very unlikely that they would end up using the tag on Chris. That right now, based on the cap numbers we told you earlier, they couldn't afford it. They'd have to make some moves just even to squeeze Chris's tag under what they've got caps constraints wise. But this isn't just, Chris isn't the only one that's in this category. It sounds like the Dolphins are not going to use the tag on Christian Wilkins. So there's going to be some big names out there. And even though a lot of teams have some money to spend, I mean, if supply can outstrip demand a little bit, maybe that'll impact Jones's value. I mean, how do you see that kind of shaking out, Nick?
I mean, you're hoping the Chiefs and Chris Jones can come to a number that's comfortable for both parties. Ideally, I think you're hoping to get something in that 26, $28 million range, like I was saying last year. Try to see if you can get that worked out collectively. I mean, I'm sure Chris's representatives are going to try to keep it in that 30, $32 million per year range and try to see if they can get that on the market. They might be able to. And I mean, I was looking at teams the other day, and teams where Chris would really make an impact, where I think financially they would do it. The Texans are a team that I think he would really kind of help catapult to a new level. Another team, if he did hit the market, the Browns are another team that if he's there, like he really turns Myles Garrett in that group into a ferocious front. The Bengals are another team that I think would be keeping tabs on Chris Jones. I don't think the 49ers have the cap to be able to do it, but I mean that's another spot to where like, they're legitimate playoff contenders that I think are going to find a way to get Chris Jones under contract if they could, just because of what he could bring to the table as a pass rusher. Let's see. Also, another team that I think would do it, and it would make Chiefs fans pretty upset, is obviously the Raiders. The Raiders are another team that I think they would get aggressive and potentially do it. The Eagles really don't need it, but you never know with Howie and how he's going to approach things, what he would end up trying to do. But yeah, I mean, I think those are kind of the big ones. Obviously, the 49ers are over the cap just a little bit. So that's not going to be there. The Browns would have to make a lot of cap room to get him. But I mean, there's easily, from a market perspective, I think there's easily 6 or 7 teams that would really, like, for example, the Cowboys would be a great spot for Chris Jones in terms of like each team needs that 3 tech that can really turn the tide for them to pair with a star rusher. So it creates that 1-2 punch. So I mean, yes, I think there's going to be teams out there that are going to be intrigued by Chris Jones, and I fully expect Chris's representatives to make sure that he technically hits the tampering period without a contract signed and agreed to, so that they get the maximum dollars squeezed out of either the Chiefs or whoever would be on the free agent market that he would potentially go to. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be up to Chris. Does he want to come back for a three-peat and try to make that run with Mahomes and Kelsey? I feel like the Chiefs are giving him what they could. I feel like the Chiefs are going to give him fair market value of what they can afford, if that makes sense. So it may not be 30 to 32 million, but in the 26 to 28 range, I think it's fair market of what they're able to give him and still be able to add other players to really try to get the offense in a better position and be able to also surround Chris with some people on defense that can also help help the defense maintain what it is or kind of evolve into what it's going to be next year. That'll be different from what this year was because the Chiefs are at their best when they continue to evolve and they don't remain the same, which sounds weird to say, but it's how they've won three Super Bowls in three different ways. And that's what they're busy. That's what they're busy. Their best success part has been is by having different road, taking a different road each time versus trying the same thing over and over again every time and just hoping for the best.
Well, you're absolutely right there. I mean, and that's something that, having covered Brett Veach now long enough, I mean, you hear him talk about every year that he has plan A going into every free agency period and off season. And he knows that, usually plans go astray about 12 minutes into the new season in the off season. So you have to have a plan B, a plan C, plan D. So they have, I think, adapted very well. You make great points about Chris, and to me, it's getting the deal done with Chris sooner than later is going to be pretty key because you look at the other guys who are out there, especially if the Ravens don't tag Justin Matabige. I mean, that's going to be a guy who is putting up numbers that are Chris Jones like, and he's 3 years younger.
Mm.
And if he signs for a big deal, the Katz brothers and Chris are going to be saying, well, wait a minute, you know what? Chris is better than this guy. So you got to pay him just what you're paying him. So, I mean, and there's going to be some big names. I mean, Christian Wilkins, like I said, looks like he's going to be out there. DJ Reader's going to be out there. There's some names at defensive tackle, Nick. I mean, it's not going to be a empty market.
Yeah, and that'll be something that will go on the list here in a little bit. And both of those individuals are on that list.
We do want to get to that. We'll be heading
Yes.
that direction next. You did say something earlier though
It's a
that did pique.
teaser. It's a teaser for
That's
people
a
listening.
teaser. You did say something earlier that piqued
Yeah.
my interest though about 40 times
Yeah.
because I know everybody's excited about that Xavier Worthy 4-2-1 40
As
time. Chris
as you
Patrick
should be.
Patrick Mahomes is pretty excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's tweeting about it. I know before he ran his 40, I know that when I was in Indy, Nick, the word was that Xavier Worthy is Tyreek Hill without the ability to track the ball.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess we'll see, but I mean, he's fast, but Nick, he is tiny.
Yeah, the thing that Tyreek had going for him, like you're saying there, and what people are saying in a brisk manner there, is Worthy can get up to the same top end speed that Tyreek Hill can without much of a problem. It doesn't take much effort to it, and he gets there very quickly within a 10-yard split. So in that regard, and his cuts in and out of his breaks are so explosive that like you don't you know there's no you're not losing anything when he tries to adjust on a route or do a double move or something. Like he is able to maintain that. Now, where the separator is, like you're saying, and the people you heard were saying, is that Tyreek didn't have to look forward of where he's running to be able to adjust to what he is seeing in terms of where the football is going. And for some guys will slow down. Some guys will have to look ahead of them to make sure that they don't trip over their feet, stumble, fall to the ground. And Tyreek was like a center fielder in baseball because the guys who play center field have to have that skill. That's why Andy Reid talks about it so much. That's why the Lorenzo Canes of the world were so special, is because they trust what they're doing. They trust their feet. They trust their explosiveness, and they are just adjusting accordingly. Um, and so with somebody like Tyreek could do that, and he didn't lose any speed, which is what made him so special. And sometimes he would honestly overrun it and have to come back for the ball at times. So people would say it's a it's an underthrown ball. No, it wasn't. Tyreek was just that fast. And like people don't appreciate that is like he had that ability to where he was kind of one of one at the time and probably still is to a certain extent to where he doesn't lose speed. Most receivers, most tight ends, they lose speed when they have to track a football and adjust to it a little bit. And that's because they're trying to stay upright. Tyreek didn't, he just didn't, he had such a special ability in terms of control wise, body control, that it didn't matter. So for somebody like Worthy, yeah, no, it's that's a skill that takes time to develop. And some of the guys that develop it had to do it in baseball. Some people have it naturally. And yeah, it's just that's it's such a rare trait that's tougher to come by than people realize. Not necessarily being able to track it, but have the speed to maintain while tracking it. That's very few people in the world that are able to do that. You know, if you think about how many people are in the world collectively, you know, it's not something you find just right around the corner. Like those are some rare people that can do that. So I wandered a lot, but that's basically what we're getting at. And then like you said, size wise, like Tyreek, he may have been 180 or 170 coming out of
He was
college.
185 at his pro day,
Yeah. So I mean,
20 pounds heavier, and he gave up 3 inches to Xavier Worthy.
but when you saw Tyreek in person, you had no worries about him being able to take a hit because he was built like a running back. He had the strength to where like you knew he could take a hit and he wasn't gonna be out for the rest of the game because he had that level of strength and he had a level of toughness about him even if he did take a hit and it hurt and he still could play through some stuff that most people wouldn't have been able to play through. So yeah, I mean that's it's one of those cases where like the further you get away in time, the more you kind of just appreciate and recognize how lucky the Chiefs were to get Tyreek Hill where they did and have him turn into the receiver that he did, given that he was a running back at Oklahoma State and then before he went to think South Alabama.
Yes, that was his great pro day. Well, West Alabama.
West Alabama. I knew it was
We
Alabama
never
and it
get
was
our
directional.
directions there. It was all directional. Yeah, 5'8" and an eighth was his height on his pro day, and 185. Worthy came in at 5'11", 165. And you're right. I mean, Tyreek was thick. I mean,
Hmm.
just everywhere. I mean, muscles on. I mean, his muscles had muscles. That's how Tyreek was. And saying that, I mean, and to Worthy's defense, I mean, saying he can't track the ball like Tyreek is kind of like saying I can't paint like Picasso. I mean,
Yeah.
Tyreek's the best in the league, so there's no doubt about that. Um, get into the free agent class. All right, let's do it. Now we're getting to the meat of it
Yeah.
here, Nick.
Yeah.
Let's start. Let's start on offense because I know where everybody wants to start. So let's just go ahead and give everybody what you want right now. Everybody wants every receiver that they can possibly get their hands on, Nick.
Yeah. All right. We'll start a receiver. Even though there's a lot of people like, oh, well, I guess I still gotta wait for the running backs. Um, no, so the first guy I'm gonna go in order here. Obviously T. Higgins is off the board with the franchise tag, so you don't have to worry about that. And yes, could they still negotiate with him? Yes, but they're gonna have to give up have to give up 2 first rounders because the Bengals aren't trading with him. And then you're gonna have to give him at minimum 20 million a year. So first guy for me, Cedric Wilson from the Dolphins. He would give them part of the speed to be able to push it downfield and potentially be able to replace what the Chiefs released in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think I said his first name right? Did I?
Yes.
Okay. I think he got me trained enough over 2 years to say it correctly. But Wilson, I mean, he's got good burst. He can, he's got the ability to separate. I mean, he catches the ball cleanly, which is a big thing that I'm always on receivers about whenever I'm watching them is, hey, do they extend their arms and catch it away from their body? Because when you body catch it, either one, it can ricochet sometimes, or two, a defender can get in there and just swipe it out because you didn't give them the full, the full challenge of trying to rip the ball out of your hand if you have your arm extended. And that's where arm length may come into play with a receiver, is how far they can extend out in some regard. So, I mean, Wilson does occasionally push off. And like that's going to be something that the Chiefs are going to have to, whether they do it through their route combinations or how they approach it, that's going to be part of what they're going to have to work with to make sure they don't get penalties for offensive PI whenever they toss the ball to him. I felt like he got lost in the Dolphins scheme, especially with having Hill and Waddle there. But I hope that a team saw his potential because he had the same potential with the Cowboys, and that's what the Dolphins saw. And I think the Dolphins had him kind of either the Waddle or Hill backup to where if one of those guys got hurt, that Wilson could kind of fill into that role and be a veteran that would understand the scheme and do that. And so they tried to find ways to get him on the field with those guys since they both stayed relatively healthy for the most part. And it just, targets wise, numbers wise, Tua's going to Tyreek every chance he gets. And so that just wasn't going to help Wilson. I think if you're trying to, I felt like you could also sell his routes well. So I think those combinations, I think that's number one. Next guy is going to be Curtis Samuel from the Commanders. He knows the system from having worked with Derrick Bieniemy last year, and so he'll be familiar with that. He can run the jet sweeps. Bieniemy had him run a lot of jet sweeps. He he lined up in the backfield and could run routes in the flats or run angle routes or whatever he needed to, and then he could also work in the slot without a problem. So I mean, he could work in the middle of the field without it. Now, where I had some issues is he did body catch more than I would like, even though he showed times where he's capable of extending his arms and catching. And the thing I want to distinguish here, whenever I talk about doing body catches, there's sometimes where you do need to do that because of a defender getting ready to come in and lay a shoulder into him. That is the best way to secure a catch. So, I mean, there are times and circumstances where I totally get why they did it and I don't knock them on it. But there are the times when they're wide open in the middle of the field and you're like, there's nobody around within 10 yards. You could easily catch that cleanly. So, but I want to make sure that I put that distinguisher out there. I thought he ran crisp routes. I loved his corner routes that he had. He doesn't have the top end speed, but he does have good burst that is in the ballpark of Rashee Rice, if that makes sense for some people, to where he may not exactly be Rice, but he's in that ballpark to where you have two guys that have that kind of level of speed and could kind of pair and work well together. I'll talk about Mike Evans. I mean, he's technically on here because just of how good of a possession receiver he is, but I do personally think he would have some struggles in the Chiefs offense with the lack of athletic ability and burst that he has now, because some of that's kind of gone away. I mean, he can make the contested catches, he can extend the arms, he can leap up, he's got good leaping ability to leap up and catch the ball over defenders. He has all that. Just where I have some concerns is some of the concentration drops that he had, but then also in and out of breaks, it once he kind of has to throttle back and slow down and then try to restart again, it takes a little bit to get back to the straight line speed he may have been in at that point. And so in and out of breaks, he loses a little bit to where Mahomes is going to have to get used to it and also trust that from a timing perspective. And I think that would be a little bit of hiccup. And I think you're paying a lot of money. I think you're going to pay more than 20 million a year for him. And I just don't know if you're going to get all the bang for your buck that you're going to pay. I think you're paying more for who Mike Evans was versus who he is, which is something Matt and I talked about in the Q&A. And that's kind of the big problem in a free agency when you get a name is you're paying for who they were, not who they can be in your scheme and who they currently are at that moment. Donovan People-Jones with the Lions, I believe at this point. He's willing to go up and get the football over the middle. He's got a fearlessness in the way that he catches. I thought he tracked the ball well. He's got good straight line speed, but I think he catches the ball in his body. He catches the ball in his body more than I would like. Um, so there's that aspect to it. I thought he had good size and could handle hits over the middle, and I thought he blocked hard when he was motivated. So there'd be some times where he may not block as well on the perimeter as he could, and that was something that Marquez Valdes-Scantling used to do really, really well, is that he could block on the perimeter, and he was always willing to help him block. So the Chiefs are going to miss that a little bit, and that's where something you hope one of the receivers the Chiefs add to that mix can do that. I'll talk about Gabe Davis, but I'm only doing it because people are wondering about him, not necessarily more because I want the Chiefs to get him. I think if you get Gabe Davis, I think you're just replacing Marquez Valdes-Scantling with another Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And I know that sounds weird to say, but like, I mean, Davis is a straight line runner. Like when he has to change direction, there's some hiccups in there, and he loses some of that speed, and it takes a minute to get the pistons firing again when they have to go in a different direction. It's, it's like a riding lawnmower. It's starting to have to make a little wider turn than you want it to before it can get back to that top end straight line speed in that regard. Um, so his brakes, I think, are stiff, and that's probably the best way to put that from a football term. Um, Comebacks, just there's a lot to be desired there. Out routes, it's a little tough, and some of those dig routes just don't have what you want on them. He can high point the football and he'll fight for the football. That's where he's best at, and that's kind of where, from a possession receiver perspective, he had a lot of drop issues, and that's where I think Buffalo's going to be willing to let him walk, is because of those two reasons. And that's what caused him to disappear at times, because he wasn't effective at their whole route tree unless a defense was giving some of those straight line plays, like the Chiefs secondary in the playoffs. There wasn't as much there. And I know people say, well, he did that one double move that dropped that Chiefs defender. Yeah, but he didn't have to turn that much on it, and it wasn't as sharp of a turn as it would have been for some other guys. Next guy on the list I'll bring up, Devin Duvernay from the Ravens. He fits Matt's ability for kick and punt returner, and he would kind of be more of a slot receiver, kind of work over the middle. He needs a change of scenery. Wherever Duvernay goes, he just needs to get away from Baltimore, because they added a lot of receivers there. He's got lost in the sauce at this point, in terms of the numbers that they have. And that the Ravens, in my opinion, were never really using him correctly to begin with, because I could see Duvernay being kind of like in this Chiefs scheme, I could see him being like a really quality Albert Wilson. And so, like, I hope that makes sense to people as I try to use players that they can kind of help them get that. I thought he had good releases off the line. He didn't get the ball thrown to him a lot because Lamar was always looking for either Andrews, or he was looking for Odell, or he was looking for Zay Flowers. And then throughout, as the year went along, he was looking for Zay Flowers a lot more, especially after Andrews got hurt. So Duvernay could run. There was a handful of plays I saw where Duvernay was just wide open, and Lamar never looked that way. Just never even thought, like, there's probably 14, 15 plays I saw where I'm like, dude, he's wide open. That there's a potential touchdown, and you just threw it for 5 yards. Good job, Lamar. But Duvernay is shifty, and he can get a couple steps on a defender, and I think that's where it could really help, somewhere like the Chiefs, maybe even, honestly, maybe even Dolphins for him. And then, like I said, good kick and punt returner. Matt, is there anything so far? Because I want to give you a chance to talk, and I still got more wide receivers on this list.
Well, I was gonna say there's one name mentioned at the combine connected to the Chiefs that I
Yeah,
am curious about, and that's Darnell Mooney.
yeah.
Obviously, he put up big numbers when Matt Nagy was his offensive coordinator in Chicago. Not as much this past season, but he's got some experience in the offense. What do you think about Mooney?
Matt, it's funny you mentioned that because he was one of the next two on the list, but I just didn't want people to get tired of hearing my voice. So thank you,
You
Ben.
need a
Feel
drink
free.
too.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So with Darnell Mooney, obviously with the Bears, he primarily worked out of the slot this past year whenever I was watching him. He's a guy who catches the football cleanly, so already high numbers on my board, and he does fully extend his hands out to make the catches. So he's not sloppy about it, in things. Now, where the reason he's going to get the chance to hit the mark is because he doesn't have the ability to separate in close quarters as much as some of the other receivers do athletically. The short area burst quickness he doesn't necessarily have from what I saw on tape. Doesn't mean he can't have it, doesn't mean he can't have a great offseason training that enhances that, which is going to happen for some players. But like, it was lacking in some of the tape that I was looking at. But I mean, if he's given a straight line to be able to take off because somebody's playing off in zone, he gets the top end speed within 7 yards. So I mean, if you give him a 7 yard runway, guy's going to be at full speed, and you're going to have some problems. And he can make it. He's got a good catch radius. He's willing to work around and catch it, and he can contort his body to be able to make some of those catches. I thought he had good extension, and for passes that were above his head. And I thought he kind of really would be able to stretch out his arms and make some tough circus catches that you're like, he shouldn't be able to make at that size and speed, but he did. So there's that one. I'm gonna go back up to Marquise Brown because people are asking about him. I'm not enamored with him as much as I had been last year because I actually watched a lot of tape. So I understand why the Cardinals are going to let him walk in free agency. With Marquise Brown, he has the speed you want, but he doesn't have an interest in competing for the football. So that's a problem. And the way he's built at like 165, 170 range, going to be similar to what Worthy is, but the lack of desire to compete for the football, that's not something you want in a receiver because that leads to interceptions and that leads to, you know, that leads to turnovers that your offense can't afford if you're the Chiefs offense this past season. Um he's I felt like he would slow play some routes if he didn't expect he was getting the ball. And like so he wouldn't give full effort on those plays, and I was disappointed in seeing that. He does not like working over the middle. Like you can tell he's nervous about taking a big hit. So unless he trusts the scheme and that he's gonna get across the field cleanly, he's very hesitant over the middle more than I expected him to be, and more than he was coming out of college. So he may have got some welcome to the NFL moments that he didn't get at Oklahoma um, along the way. And he will protect himself from taking a big hit even if that means that he doesn't get extra yards that he needs to, and that if it means he doesn't catch the pass, but he's able to protect himself and keep his ribs from taking a shot or getting laid out, he's okay with that. So and part of it may be he just made business decisions in Arizona, and that may be that might be the case, but I didn't like the lack of competition I saw because I'm like, hey, for what he's probably going to ask in that anywhere between that 12 to 18 million range, depending on what the market thinks, because I know for the most part people are projecting about 16 million. Like you need if you're going to get paid that type of money, you better compete and you better be okay with taking some shots that are going to be less than ideal. So that was my knock on him is that Brown will alligator arm it sometimes. So no, thank you. If that's what you're getting on the return on investment, probably not going to work out. And you can get two more receivers that are competitive at half the price. KJ Osborne for the Vikings, do like his size, but he's boomer bust potential and what you're going to get out of him. So you got to believe your wide receivers coach can bring out the boom in him and that he won't continue with the bust. He's got a good feel for voids and coverage, and he just well off of defenders and sees the defender does this and he's going to do that. So he fits the Chiefs in terms of the zone scheme aspect and being able to read and react with what the coverages are. I was actually surprised and impressed with that. He does have some explosiveness once the ball is in his hands, more so than he kind of does in some of his routes. But there are just moments where concentration drops would happen, and they happen more than you want, and that's why the Vikings are probably going to let him walk, is because of how often he would drop the football, and you're like, come on, man. Um, but he does fight to get open. So that was something that like there's all these little pieces with guys that you're looking for trait wise, and some of the guys have it, some don't. But the number one thing is you always want is guys who are competitive. If you have guys who are competitive and willing to work, you always have a shot. Next guy I'm going to bring up is Jalen Guyton from the Chargers. Now, he has sneaky good speed and he's got a very competitive nature to win the football. He's capable of getting a couple of steps on defenders and he creates some separation. Not, not dominant every single time he's going to get open, but he is able to create it from time to time. Again, catches the ball cleanly and has good extension with his hands, how long his arms are, and he's willing to show his hands. This is where I thought he was different than a lot of the other guys on the market. He's willing to show his hands late. So, some receivers don't like to do that because they don't trust their hand-eye coordination. He does, and he will show that late. And the defender's in the dark to where they're like, "Oh, I got the ball. I'll be dang. All right, well, lost that one." And so, but he worked mostly in the slot. So he's probably going to be more of an over the middle defender, kind of your 3 or 4 receiver, but there is that aspect to it. Next one on the list, Juwan Jennings from the 49ers. He's a restricted free agent, but with the Niners cap situation, they're going to have to make a decision at what tender they want to put on him. Do they want to do an original one that's like 2 million, or do they want to get greedy and try to get a higher pick that's really going to kind of cost them? And if they do the original tender pick, like they just get a right of first refusal. So, I
He
mean,
was He was a seventh rounder. So if you
Hmm.
signed him, and I had the tenders up here because that was the next question I was going to ask you, Nick, was about Juwan Jennings.
Matt, feel free to ask it right now.
Because yeah, he was a seventh round pick, so the original round tender would be a 3.1 million. Now the 49ers would have the chance to match. So if you signed him, they could absolutely match it. But I would give up a seventh rounder for Juwan Jennings. The question might be if they put a second round tender on him,
Hmm.
because that's $4.89 million.
Right.
If you're the Chiefs, would you sign him for 4.89? Because like you mentioned, 49ers are a little bit of a cap space problem. So that might hurt a little bit, but you'd have to give up number 64. I would do it, but would you, Nick?
I would not. Not right now. Not until you had a trade where you had another second rounder.
That would
I
help.
would I would personally not feel comfortable doing that if that's your only second rounder because you need that to be able to potentially maneuver if you need to in the first round right now. So, and with how limited the Chiefs are pick wise, they need to pick up more. Or if they have something in their mind where hey, we're trading down from 32 either way and we're going to pick up, a couple more picks, then hey, you work out that strategy down the road in your contingency plans. But if I'm not getting another second round pick back, I would be antsy about potentially doing that. And that's probably the way the 49ers are going to discourage a team from being able to do that is that would be too rich probably to do a second rounder. But I will still do the analysis on him. Um and what I will say on Juwan Jennings from my notes, um I don't expect him to make it to market, but he again another guy who catches the ball cleanly. I thought he was a very powerful route runner and had strong legs to be able to break arm tackles. Obviously, he showed that in the Super Bowl when he scored a touchdown on the Chiefs. And in some of the times when a defender made grab, he had the power to run through it and not have it be able to slow him down. He knows how to high point of football. And like I said, he runs through defenders in the open field. He will lower the shoulder and he will punish a defender for even thinking that they could tackle him. Like he just has a certain competitiveness and mentality about him that is really promising to where if you added him to the mix, you're not asking him to be a one, you just want him to be a complementary receiver. And that's really what he is in San Francisco. And for San Francisco, looking at their overall scheme, they're needing a number one guy too. I know that sounds weird to say with Brent Ayuk there, but like that was part of their problem is they didn't have a go-to guy that really helps Ayuk and Jennings get to another level. Jennings stepped up on the biggest stage, so he showed that competitiveness, and the Chiefs defense gave him those opportunities. But overall, like the Niners still need to find another receiver to put with those two guys if they keep both of them to really help their offense hum. But Matt, last one I'll say, and this isn't necessarily a receiver, and then we will be done with the receiver group. It's been a long road here. I hope everybody's enjoyed it, but it's given you a lot of options. Jamal Agnew, the returner from the Jaguars. Now, he had a leg, ankle, I believe it was a leg injury at the end of the year. So the question will be, can he get back to full speed just right before he hits 30? But athletically, he's an elite returner. So if you're signing him to be an elite returner. You're
There
signing
you
him to
go.
be able to work in your flats and your screen game, some crossing routes. Like he just has blazing speed before the injury, and he's got great vision to go with it as a returner. So you can find plays to work with him as a gadget guy in your offense if you need to, and if you see more in him, you can. But a lot of teams, like the Jaguars, for years have saved him for the returner just because of how much of a game changer he could be, how he can flip the field on a dime just with his speed and his vision. But he could be used on jet sweeps. Like, I mean, there's a handful of routes you could put him in and get him open, and he could get you an easy first down. So, Matt, that's the wide receiver group. I hope people got their questions answered that they want. I even mentioned guys that I wouldn't add to the mix, but then we'll also see what ends up happening here if the Raiders release Hunter Renfro, if the Chargers release Keenan Allen, one of the best route runners in the game. We'll see if the Chargers release Mike Williams, and maybe the Chiefs can get him on a prove it discount deal with the amount of injuries he has, because he was kind of that guy that I know I had a feeling they were eyeballing whenever he was potentially going to hit free agency, and then the Chargers gave him the big 3 year, $60 million deal. I think this is about 20 a year back then. So he was the original guy I was intrigued to take on that T Higgins role that T Higgins is not going to get to take on with the Chiefs in 2024 as of this time.
I got one question for you,
Yeah.
and you may have mentioned it, but maybe I glossed over it.
Yeah.
I would describe this as maybe Walmart Mike Evans,
Yeah.
because he is going to be 30. Tyler Boyd,
Hmm.
would you have any interest?
Because of his age, I would be nervous about paying him anything over like a $5 million a year aspect.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to get more in the open market than that. So, but Boyd can work in the slot without a problem. I mean, Boyd has the shake. He has the ability to be able to, to be able to run the route tree for the most part and not really lose the speed. He's competitive. You're not really worried about is he going to go try to catch that football because he took some shots in some Chiefs AFC championship games, some other Chiefs Bengals games, and he can really what I can say about him is like he would work well in the Chiefs scheme, but he's not, you don't want to spend top dollar for him. If you're having to spend 10, 12, 15 million, I don't think that that's really going to give you what you're after in terms of what you need from him as a receiver because he paired really well being the number 3 guy with Jamar Chase and T Higgins. And in the Chiefs AFC Championship game, he was a difference maker until he pulled his hamstring because he was the guy who was getting open because the Chiefs were having to double the other 2 guys, giving him one-on-ones, and he took advantage. So if he's a part of a wide receiving trio, I think he showcases more of his skills. But if he's kind of the focal point of what teams are going to take away, I think there's going to be a lot more struggle. And obviously, the reason he's older is because he came out older in the draft, and this is actually his first chance at free agency. So that tells you kind of how old he was when he got drafted.
Yeah. And, one thing that stands out, especially because the Chiefs are walking away from Marquez Valdez-Scantling right now,
Hmm.
is that to me, a really good rule of thumb for receivers is look for guys who put up numbers with bad offenses.
Mm.
Because guys putting up decent numbers in great offenses and with great quarterbacks, like Tyler Boyd has done, like Marquez did in Green Bay, you shouldn't expect that. I mean, you shouldn't expect a guy putting up big numbers with Aaron Rodgers to come and put up even bigger numbers with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's going to
Mhm.
be probably comparable, and that's what Marquez was. So Curtis Samuel stands out on the list to me because that guy has put up really good numbers with some terrible quarterback play,
Right.
and not just in one team in Washington, but with a couple. And like you said, you mentioned the Washington connection and Eric Bieniemy. That's a good key to me. All right, let's go to running back, Nick,
Oh
because
yeah.
not quite as deep, but I know you've got some pretty interesting names that you're passionate about here.
Yeah, yeah, and I apologize how long this has already become as a podcast, just from the receiver analysis that we did. But hey, that's what we're here for. I'm gonna start with my number 1 guy on the list. It's gonna be DeAndre Swift from the Eagles. Like that's the guy that I covet. If I'm the Chiefs, I don't think you're breaking the bank for him. I'm crossing my fingers you can get him in that $6 to $8 million per year range, and I know that's expensive for a running back. But with how dynamic Swift can be as a runner in this Chiefs scheme, and how good he did in the Eagles scheme, even though they didn't always properly use him. He's got close to top end speed. He may not completely be there, but he's in that ballpark, and that would be a massive upgrade for the Chiefs in terms of what they were doing. He's comfortable running out of the shotgun, and that's a big thing. Like whenever I'm looking at running backs and draft prospects, is are they better under center? Are they better under shotgun? Or does it matter? If it doesn't matter, they leapfrog to your board because then that gives you versatility and how and what plays you can call and defenses can't key on things. So like because there's certain guys that do better from under center and run between the tackles, and there's guys that read better in shotgun. And reading in shotgun is tougher for a running back than from a quarterback under center. It's just something about it. So like whenever you find a guy that can do both, like they're kind of a unicorn, which is, from a running back perspective. So like a guy who can do both those is that's pretty promising. So somebody like Damian Williams actually did pretty well with both of them. And that's why he got the carries that he did with the Chiefs for during the short span that he did. But with Swift, like I said, he can run the jet sweeps, he can catch in space. So those are 2 things that like you want in a back. Um, he's he's either he's not he's not really big in trying to run over defenders. He likes to run around them. So he's not that punishing type, which is what you would use Pacheco for, and that's why you pair him with that. He's not gonna break a ton of tackles. So what you're getting him for is consistent yardage. Like you're guaranteeing, hey, when I get him here, I can get 6, I can get 10. We're going to keep favorable down in distance, and like he keeps you on time. And he can move the chains quickly. So like that, those are kind of the things with Swift. And then obviously, I feel like he's got good vision. I think he's got a good feel for the cutback. So like that pairs well with what Pacheco is, and then actually makes Pacheco a better running back because Swift is tiring out the defenses. So when you bring in the hammer like Pacheco can be, Pacheco's even more effective, and he can take the souls of the people when he runs them over, especially in that fourth quarter. So that's it. The next highest guy on my list is going to be Saquon Barkley from the Giants. Now, obviously, think he's hoping to probably get 10 plus million a year on the open market. Now the reason I put him so high is because of how much of a weapon he would be in the Chiefs' overall scheme, both in the passing game and run game. I mean, he's got the ability to be a dangerous receiver, especially in the open field, and he can run those routes. Like, I mean, like that's what separates him from any other running back in this class in terms of how I could see Andy Reid and Matt Nagy being able to use him. Um, like once he goes into motion or he works in the flats, like defenses have to really respect what he can do. And with the Chiefs, like that's pretty big to be able to have another guy you can motion and really kind of manipulate a defense the way that you see fit. And I mean, he's a mismatch for linebackers and safeties. So I mean, like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like he's going to create favorable mismatches, and the Chiefs can move the chains just simply because of that with him in the passing game. Now, I think he's a good zone runner, and I think he can build up his. I think he can build up his speed. He's got a sneaky little shake when he's facing defender one on one to be able to make them grab air and not be able to tackle him. But like I said, he doesn't have that top end burst after some of those injuries. He used to have that kind of coming out of Penn State, but he's lost a little bit of it, and that's to be expected. Um, but he can still get a couple steps on defenders and make them pay. So he was he was my second best in terms of what the Chiefs could do. Third best for me is going to be Austin Eckler from the Chargers when he hits free agency. He would be more of that Jerick McKinnon role because he's got the necessary size to take shots and still be able to not get hurt, and he can run through tackles. He can keep his balance, and he's still got good speed for his age. He works well. He works great in the flats. He's a mismatch in the flats, and you can use him on checkdowns. You can use him on screens. I still think he's a big mismatch for linebackers, even at his age, and he can run out of shotgun and under center without a problem. And he can turn into a power back if he needs to, but he can also be a finesse back, and I like his change of pace. Um, I'll put him on here, but I don't think he's going to be leaving. Is Josh Jacobs from the Raiders? First off, his last name is Jacobs, so I mean you got to tip your cap to him on that part.
Absolutely.
Yes, but he's the running back that's got a good combination of speed and power. He's got really strong lower legs that he can power through and keep and bounce off defenders and really kind of punish them in the way that Pacheco does. He's tough to bring down. A single defender typically doesn't bring him down. It takes two, three guys just because of how powerful his lower body is. He can run stretches and zone really well, which is what they had a lot of him do. I like his vision, and I feel like he can find the correct hole no matter what the circumstance or situation is, whether it's front or backside. Um, and then he's capable of making the defender miss in the flats whenever it's in the passing game, and he takes some time. I think it takes about 7 yards for him to reach probably top end speed. And so there's not going to be a ton of opportunities for him to get to that, but he can get to it if the hole is open. So again, I don't expect the Raiders to let him go, but we'll see what happens. Next guy I'll put on the list, Devin Singletary from the Texans. He's got good short area quickness. He lacks the top end speed that you'd want, but he can juke defenders either in the hole or in open space. But he needs a straight line run to get to his top end speed. And that's the reason Buffalo wasn't willing to kind of keep him, and then he ended up with the Texans, is just because they got James Cook, who could be more dynamic, and they're always trying to replace Singletary with somebody more dynamic, and that's what James Cook became for them. And so, I mean, Singletary's on his best when it's quick hitting runs. If you can give him a trap, if you can give him a draw, you can give him stuff like that, just kind of those quick hitters. And I know a draw may not seem like that, but a draw is you getting guys to come up because you think it's fast and then boom, hit it. So if he has a clean hole for the most part, I think he's able to kind of really showcase who he is. And look, I mean, he's good in the open field as when it's a fire drill. So when it turns fire drill time and needs to become a receiver, like that's kind of where he can shine. And then finally, if you're wanting to take a chance on a 1 year vet minimum guy, maybe put some incentives in it. I am intrigued to see what J.K. Dobbins can do with the previously with the Ravens.
Chiefs can't pass on J.K. Dobbins a second time, can they, Nick?
I mean, you hope not because I know they wanted to get him in the draft and didn't work out that year. But yeah, it just with JK, I mean, he's had multiple injuries that have kind of ended seasons, so you're kind of nervous about that. At this point, I think it's been in an Achilles and an ACL, if I remember correctly. I think he's had one of each. So, like, you're wanting to do a 1 year vet minimum, prove it type of deal with him and hoping he can get to form. That video that he showed the other day where he's already cutting off the Achilles and everything. Hey, those are promising things. And he's not the guy you're basing, if you're signing free agents, he's not the guy you're basing it off of, but he's a player that you're like, hey, we want to have him as a part of this puzzle piece. If he returns to form, it's just a great investment, but you're not banking on him. So like he's a guy you just kind of you know you're taking a flyer on. You're picking up a lottery ticket and hoping it hits big, like I do every week at the gas station.
It's interesting to me, because Jacobs and Barkley, along with Derrick Henry, are in that category that market value suggests that they're going to be at the top of the market, maybe in the $10 million plus. Still crazy to me that teams would be paying running backs that much, but I mean, Barkley in particular is a special player, so I can certainly see that still probably going to be out of the Chiefs' price range. It amazes me that DeAndre Swift is kind of in that next category, but you're right. I mean, he's kind of in that $6 to $8 million category where the market suggests, like with maybe an Eckler. I know Tony Pollard's been mentioned in that group too. But to me, I mean, especially you look at age, DeAndre Swift just at 25 still. I mean, that's 2 years younger than Barkley. I
Mhm.
mean, and where we're usually talking about go with the age, in that case, DeAndre Swift would be a huge advantage. There's another one. I keep going to the dollar bin at Walmart, Nick.
That's fine. That's
Maybe I
fine.
just need, maybe I'm just even shopping at Dollar General. I don't know. I'm going for Dollar General free agents.
Yeah.
Um, AJ Dillon,
Hmm.
also young, still just 25. Any interest there at a very cheap deal?
So with AJ Dillon, I mean, don't get me wrong, he had a monster game against the Chiefs in that Sunday night football game. Like he had that he was out there looking like a Ron Dane in that game. To put it back to old school running backs. Like he's I see a more athletic Natron Means in him. Yeah, it
Now we're
sounds
going really old school.
yeah, but I see a more athletic Natron Means, but he's a guy that he's gonna be he would be taking some of Pacheco's snaps with that power run game. And I mean, don't get me wrong, he could be effective in certain ways, but he's more of a power thicker back that I think doesn't necessarily have the top end speed that this team needs. He could help you on goal line, hopefully, if he gets up to that. But it takes him a minute to get up to where he's at his power. And I know that sounds weird to say, but like it takes him a minute to kind of get warmed up to that part and to be able to kind of use his lower body strength to just run over some dudes. And I don't know if he has that level of top end speed that the Chiefs are really missing and need to attack. And I think that's a big part of that. That's a big part of why I kept him off the list, is just because I'm like, well, they've already kind of got Pacheco, and having somebody like him that you're going to have to run him a certain way in the offense, and it's going to be predictable when he's coming in and what he's going to do. Like you lose a lot of that element of surprise that you can with some of the other running backs I mentioned. And I'll throw in two other guys. I'll throw in Tony Pollard that people asked about and thought I was going to mention in this list. The reason I didn't is because he doesn't have the same speed he did before he had the foot injury in the playoff game and got the hip tackle on him. He didn't regain that form after that. He's a couple steps slower, and that's the whole reason the Cowboys are going to let him go into free agency, is because he's not the same level that he was before that injury. And that happens. And it may take a couple years, but it may also never return. And that's something where you have to have somebody do a physical and look at him in person if that may be of interest to you. From what I saw on tape, I didn't see enough there to put him on that list. And I know people have brought up Antonio Gibson too with the Commanders. Gibson is slower than I would personally want and what I feel like the Chiefs need. And I don't feel like the Chiefs don't already have that on their roster.
Yeah. One more skill position group left, Nick, and I know this one's going to be short
Yeah.
because there's not a ton of tight ends out there on the
Yeah.
market that I think one fit the Chiefs' needs and two are probably worth the investment.
Right.
So, who are the tight ends that if the Chiefs want to dip into that market, you'd go for?
Yeah. From a tight end perspective, um, uh, what I would say is Noah Fant's going to be the best of the bunch. Like he's going to be the guy if somebody's looking for an athletic tight end, and at his age that he's still at, like that's the guy teams are going to throw money at. Would he be great in Kansas City? He would, but I think teams are going to throw significant money at him because he's going to be the best of the bunch in terms of what you're trying to get in free agency, what you want athletically, and be able to get it at a young price that you can still develop him. So, I mean, would he pair well with Kelsey? Yes, he would. Athletically, the Chiefs could have a ton of fun with him. He's a solid blocker, and he would be great in the scheme. But I think there's a team that's probably easily going to pay him 8 to 10, if not more, on the open market. And Chiefs can't do that
Not in
for
the
a second
ballpark.
tight end.
No. Yeah.
Like that's not the field that they're playing in. So, Mike Gesicki from the Patriots, previously the Dolphins, that is a guy that athletically could take some snaps for Kelsey and be able to kind of maintain part of what Kelsey is and be moved around everything. I don't know if he's the best blocker in the world, but he has the route. He can run the route tree that they need to. But I think you're going to be splitting him out more and kind of using him as a mismatch against linebackers and safeties and kind of pair with a Kelsey, but also, be able to kind of rotate him in some spots. But I don't know if you're getting the same level of blocker that you would have with a Blake Bell. And then finally, Jonas Smith, that we're going to mention, who got released by the Falcons. He actually still has some pretty good athletic ability for inching close to 30 with where he's at now. And he would actually, him and Kelsey together could work. And he's still got good athletic ability to make teams pay over the middle. It's probably going to slow down in the next 2 years because of age. But if you're trying to look for a guy to kind of help take some snaps away from Kelsey, understand how to adjust the coverages and be able to work off the coverages, he could pair well with Kelsey. I just don't know what he may be waiting to see what his market is and what the number out there is after some of the other tight ends sign and people start to get a little bit desperate.
Yeah, and obviously the Chiefs will still have Noah Gray under contract for this year. So,
Mhm.
and I still get the sense that the Chiefs as a receiving tight end still value Noah Gray as I think higher than his numbers have suggested to this point. So I think they're still locked in to Noah being their number two. So if they're looking for a veteran free agent, I mean, it's probably to upgrade the Blake Bell position, and that's not
Mhm.
to preclude that the Chiefs bring Blake Bell back. I mean, I feel like his best days are probably behind him.
Mhm.
He was used fairly sparingly this year. But unless there's a affordable veteran on the market, I mean, that's probably where the Chiefs will end up being. It wouldn't surprise me if they invested and brought somebody in who was more productive. But
Mhm.
yeah, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a super high priority for this team. Are there any other position groups on the offense that you could see the Chiefs sticking their toe into? I mean, is tackle one of those positions where you could see them going for a veteran?
No, Matt, it's funny you ask because I did watch some tackles too. This list isn't going to be very long. And I'm going to mention some names even that I don't think the Chiefs are going to get, but they intrigued me, so I added them on here. David Bakhtiari from the Packers. That's the first one I'll bring up. He really struggled to reset his anchor. I was kind of surprised by that. When the defender started bull rushing him, he had trouble with that. And given the injuries he's had lower body wise, it doesn't surprise me in that regard. Wide nines gave him the most trouble, and I was a little surprised by that one. He isn't as fluid as he was younger whenever he's working with Rodgers, especially on reach blocks and getting to the second level. He's serviceable, but when I was watching him, he didn't look fully recovered from what he had been dealing with the year before. And you don't know if it's age, if it's, just working his way back or what. But either way, I still think Jets general manager Aaron Rodgers is going to try to push for him to come there. I was really surprised Aaron Rodgers wasn't up at the podium talking when Joe Douglas was talking about the McCole Hardman situation there. I was really surprised. I thought Aaron Rodgers was going to be up at the podium talking about what they're looking for prospect wise, but instead Joe Douglas is up there accusing McCole Hardman and the Chiefs of certain things.
Absolutely crazy, Nick. Absolutely crazy.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's there's still some possibilities. Obviously, some veterans could end up on the free agent market, but in the Chiefs, I mean, taking Brett Veach at kind of his word and face value from what he said at the combine, he told us that what they're probably looking for on the offensive line is depth. I mean, they're
Yeah.
looking for competition.
Yeah.
That left tackle spot is not solidified. So by bringing in competition, that could be anything. I mean, it could be bringing in another veteran like a Donovan Smith. Doesn't even preclude Donovan Smith returning to the Chiefs, although I don't think that's most likely. But remember, he didn't even sign with the Chiefs until May. So that could be a late wave free agency that they look at. They might look at it through the draft. Wanye Morris might be your starting left tackle. Joe Tooney could be your starting left tackle for all we know. That's left tackle, I think, is still a fairly fluid spot for the Chiefs, but I don't know that there's an obvious choice out there because I know, like, hey, there's Tyron Smith may hit the free market, it looks like, but I don't know that when you're paying your $20 million right tackle, that you're going to be paying big bucks to your left tackle as well. I mean,
Right.
that's for the Chiefs, for better or worse, they are probably not Dollar General left tackle, but maybe at least Walmart left tackle.
Yeah.
Maybe Tarjay.
Yeah, Torche. Yeah, I'll pronounce his name incorrectly, but it's fine. He's from the Packers too. He played a tackle, played more right tackle, but I know he's been a left tackle guard and everything. Neishman from the Packers. He had that athletic ability you could ask for. He widened the pocket, fluidly. He'd stick with defenders. He can pick up and pass off. He can, but his problem was he'd routinely get beat on his inside shoulder. So that was kind of frustrating to see, and he would get sloppy with his punch at times. And I felt like he'd load up too much on his punch and then drop his head. So like that would allow defenders. There's good defenders are going to be able to swipe those hands and dip and rip under it, especially if you're going to get off balance like that. A guy I was hoping to like, but he didn't have good tape, was Jack Driscoll from the Eagles. Very young guy who had played tackle. Um, Athletically, I was hoping there'd be something there and be like, hey, that could be a guy who can compete, get for cheap and everything. And then I saw how slow his feet were, and they didn't have much pop in his punch, and I was like, that's why they didn't use him at tackle much when Lane Johnson went down. Makes sense. Tyron Smith, the Cowboys left tackle. He can still lock out defenders, but his legs are shot. They look shot on tape, and he didn't have much chase left in him to kind of regain control. He's a technically sound, fundamentally sound guy, but you can tell the injuries and the wear and tear of being in the league were all there. A guy who actually kind of surprised me was Josh Jones from the Texans. I thought he has athletic ability you want in a tackle. I thought he had quick enough feet to kind of stick with the defender. I thought he had a solid anchor. But he's another guy. He gets beat on that inside shoulder. If he sets too wide and if a wide nine's going against him, he gives up that inside far too often and can't recover as quickly as you'd want from time to time. I want to see a more violent punch, and I'm hoping if Andy Heck and them get a hold of him that they can make that happen. And I just want to see better power on some of his drive blocks. But reach blocks were there, which the Chiefs run a lot of that in zone. So he had the footwork to be able to get it done. Um, Next guy I'll bring up positively, then I'll talk to negatively, and then we'll move forward. Charles Leno from the Commanders, who just got released this past week. He's going to have hip surgery, and I can tell why he's going to have hip surgery after I saw the tape. Um, like you could tell his hips are bothering him because he was lunging on his punches more so than like a guy who could stay upright and be able to set like like he's sitting at a table on an uncomfortable chair. And you're really having to use those quads and everything and that lower back. You could tell like that whole physically that was bothering him because like when a guy lunges at punches, like they're either got bad technique or a veteran like him has been in the league long enough, something's hurting their body and they're just trying to get by and get that check to clear. Um, he so it allowed defenders to kind of rip underneath him and kind of swim over the top. But again, he still showed good athletic ability for a guy that was playing hurt. He can reach and get to the second level without a problem. He walls off defenders well. I thought he had good quickness in his ability to pull, and but his punches because of how he was having to set at times, and I could tell some of the pain he was going through, like they were ineffective. because he couldn't strike it the same way he's probably used to, and he's just trying to do what he could physically to kind of keep defenders at bay. Oh
There,
yeah, no, go ahead, Matt.
go no, go ahead.
Okay. Two guys I was gonna say no to. Jonah Williams is gonna get brought up a lot from the Bengals. That guy, mentality wise, the NFL's broke him. Whatever he had at Alabama, he does not have anymore. Mentality wise, he didn't have the fight in him anymore. Like he has all that athletic ability you could want, but dude, that fireplace is in embers at this point. If it's not completely out, like that competitive drive, that is gone. The NFL took his soul, and it's not giving it back. So like yeah, like he would get walked back he with ease, like he missed blocks in open space, and I'm just like, Orlando Brown was an upgrade over Jonah Williams for the Bengals. So like that, if that doesn't tell you where I stand on that, then I don't know what will. Mekhi Becton from the Jets, you see him, you're like, that size, that foot quickness that he has. Oh my goodness. This guy, they're letting him hit the open market. Why are they letting that happen? This has all the intangibles that you want, or all the measurables that you see. And then you're like, and then you watch him play, and you're like, okay, he doesn't have the intensity. He does not want to engage with defenders, does not want to bury him, even though he physically can. He's just along for the ride. So, yeah, those two lack the competitiveness and fire that I know Andy Heck's going to want along that offensive line, and it's just not going to work out well for either of them. Hey, maybe they get it back somewhere else, but their current situations, they're not about that. They're not about that life where they're at right now. So,
I'm
Matt,
glad.
that is all the offensive free agents that I can give you, and I hope that is as in depth as I tried to be as in depth as I could, and try to give people a reason of what and why.
I'm glad you brought up the energy and fire that Andy Heck desires on that offensive line, because there is one free agent that I know has exactly the qualities that he's looking for in a tackle.
Are you gonna say his son? Is that the name you're gonna
Charlie
say?
Heck is a free agent, Nick.
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna be stunned if he's not here. It
I will
would not
not be
surprise
stunned
me
at all.
one. I would not be.
I almost expected. I will be surprised at this point if Charlie Heck is not a Chief.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna be stunned one bit if he's not here,
And
because
hey, a past starting offensive tackle in the NFL. I mean, if he were to come to the Chiefs on a veteran minimum deal,
mhm,
not a terrible signing.
yes,
So we'll see what happens.
yes.
Oh,
I love that you brought him up, because you and I both know that's happening.
it's absolutely happening. Going over to the defensive side, Nick.
Yeah,
Especially, I know you've looked a lot at the defensive line, and that's area where Chiefs one need depth at defensive end. That's absolutely going to be looking at some guys that can. One, I mean, George Karlaftis is penciled in as a starter right
yeah,
now. Right now, most likely, Felix Anadike Uzama would be penciled in as your other starter.
hmm,
So you're either looking for some depth or competition there. Depending
yeah,
on what happens with Chris Jones, you might be looking for two starting defensive tackles,
yeah.
because I think your most experienced defensive tackle at this point signed to the roster would be maybe either Neil Farrell or Matt Dickerson. So,
And Bugs will have
and
he'll
Bugs,
he'll be
yep,
up to that point with the Steelers and Lions a little bit.
Isaiah Bugs. So, yeah, my defensive line might be
Hmm.
near you circling, Nick.
Where would you like to start? You want to go ends or D tackle? And this is our last group that I personally have, because
Well,
linebackers and corners I didn't have on the mix.
let's start with the defensive tackles, and then we can start with end with the glamour guys of the edge rushers.
The glamour guys. Okay, defensive tackles is going to be short and sweet, but
Who's
it still
affordable for
exists.
the Chiefs is my question.
Okay, well, that we're not doing that. We've ruined the list. It's done. It's over with. No, the guy that I want one tech wise, if you're going to go out and get somebody to eat up defenders to help Chris Jones, if Chris Jones is staying on the roster, is Tim Settle from the Bills. He was with the Commanders before. I liked him last year. He got a prove it deal there in Buffalo. He's capable of taking on double teams at the one tech spot and holding the line. He's got the strength to push double teams back or even rip through it. So I mean, like, he just needs to be in the right system, have the right defensive line coach to really kind of drive him. He was rotational. He was a good pass rusher in Washington, and he was a good rotational guy. He's actually gotten a little bit better condition wise while he's been in Buffalo. And if the Chiefs can get him in even better condition, he could play even more snaps than what he did. And I'm talking in the 35, 40 range, I think he has that potential. Um, the thing about Settle is for being over 330 pounds plus, he's got good lateral quickness. He could run some of those twists, some of those stunts, some of those gains the Chiefs want, and he can shoot the backfield, just shoot a gap and get in the backfield pretty quickly for his size, which shouldn't be able to. Like I said, right now he's a rotational one tech. And with what the Chiefs are doing, they kind of have that with Bugs, kind of have, oh, they're hoping to have that with Farrell. And like he would just be a part of that mix, but he may be too expensive. We'll see. Um, Settle had a presence in the run game, and he, like I said, he can hold the line. So he's kind of that number one tech. Next guy I'll mention, it's going to be a three tech, is Christian Wilkins from the Dolphins. He's the second top guy. He's not the first, but he's the second top guy. If you're going to lose Chris Jones, that's going to be who you're going to try to pivot to if you want to replace him as a veteran free agent. He's able to maintain the line on one-on-ones, but he will get moved in double teams. So that's why you need a one tech that forces the issue so he doesn't take on the doubles. Um, the reason he doesn't take on doubles well is because most defenders, when they take on doubles, they have to drop a knee based on where they're trying to turn them to. And so you have to take immediately drop one of the legs to the side they're turning to you and create a pile. That's what those guys have to do. And Wilkins isn't the best at doing that. He keeps trying to hold them at bay with his strength and his arms and kind of his anchor. They're like, no, you're not the offensive lineman. You drop the knee and you create the pile. Um, he likes to shoot the gaps and get a field. And so, I mean, you kind of have that's the one thing that's kind of like Chris Jones for the most part. His hand fighting skills weren't as violent or quick as Chris Jones's is. So, I mean, you're losing that ability, and that's where Joe Cullen's really gonna have to coach him up and work with him. Next guy on the list, obviously, I'm gonna mention, but he's gonna be expensive. But if you're having a pivot, then you're gonna pay top dollar for this guy, and you're willing to pay top dollar. Is Justin Madubuike from the Ravens? Like that guy, athletically, the size, the speed, the strength, all of it combined, he's gonna command doubles, and he can still beat doubles. And like Madubuike is gonna be getting a payday. So if you have a guy of his caliber out there, like yes, you will pay that for him to be kind of the centerpiece of your defensive line. So I mean, we'll see what happens, but like if you lose Chris, then that's the first person you got to pivot to, and you got to be okay with paying the money, and you probably will be given his age. But I still don't see the Ravens letting him hit the market because of how important he is to their defensive line.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. I mean, and that's the deal with free agency is that if you're not able to keep Chris Jones, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you want the same kind of production and you want a player that's comparable, Matabike is the guy.
Right.
You're also going to have to pay more than you were probably offering Chris Jones. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you're trying to keep Chris Jones for under 30,
Mm-hmm.
Matabike's probably going to get more than 30. So,
Potentially,
I
yes.
mean, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I'm trying to come up with a better name than Tim Settle, and I really can't. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a guy that even if the Chiefs keep Chris Jones, I, would be drooling over having Tim Settle
Mm-hmm.
come in.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other guy that kind of flies below the radar for me, and I haven't watched enough of him play. I'm only just looking at the numbers and just the,
Mm-hmm.
how much he's played, what his market value is. Justin Jones with the Bears
Mm-hmm.
just seems to be one of those middle of the road, below the
Mm-hmm.
radar kind of guys
Yeah.
that plays a lot, is productive, but doesn't have like, superstar value attached to him.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to go watch his tape now. I did not have him on my list, but I'm
I don't
intrigued down
blame you.
that,
I
and
mean, I'm
I
I'm
will
just
watch him.
I'm looking at free agents over the weekend about, like who's out there that's, kind of in that Brett Veach third wave of free agency that maybe you scoop up and we'll see. I mean, but no, I mean, I like I said, I've been trying to come up with somebody better than Tim Settle, and I can't. I
Yeah.
mean, other than keeping Chris Jones, obviously,
Right. And
but
then
that
the final guy I mentioned, Leonard Williams from the Seahawks. So I know we'll get questions either way about him because of his name and his history. Um, yeah, he's lost a couple steps from who he
yes, he
was as a draft pick and where he's at now. I mean, he kind of needs an open lane to be able to get to top end acceleration. Like he can hold a line of scrimmage, but he can't really push defenders back like he used to. He's just not as NFL's caught up to him, wear and tear's caught up to him, and I can see why the Giants were okay with trading him and getting rid of that contract. and I don't know if he's gonna regain that form, unfortunately.
All
So
right. All
yeah,
right, Nick,
defensive tackle
let's
market's pretty quick there. It's
pretty
gonna drop pretty quick.
pretty quick. All right. The guys who make the big bucks on the defensive line, the edge
Yeah,
rushers.
yeah.
Who's going to be playing opposite George Karlaftis, Nick?
Oh boy.
Who you got? Who's your free agent crush?
The first two people I'm waiting to see, and Chiefs fans already know them, is what's going to happen with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack with the Chargers. That is my number one question because if Khalil Mack hits the market, I'm not just talking name. I'm telling you that guy still got power. That guy replaces what Mike Dana used to do. You're just seeing if you can pay him Mike Dana level or not to do it. And you may not be able to, but like he still has, for his age, he's still got power as a bull rusher. He can do some speed, but his first couple steps, the stab that he can do, the bull rush he can do, he's still got those to where he can be a power rusher in the Chiefs scheme. I mean, Bosa still has injuries, but still, he's still when he's not hurt, he's still one of the premier edge rushers in the league. So like, you're still kind of waiting to see what happens with those guys and if the Chargers, because of their cap situations, because the Chargers have to, they're either going to have to pull a Saints and restructure everybody and kick the can down the road, which I don't think Harbaugh is going to do because he's going to want to build the team in his way and he's going to want that flexibility. But like they got to make decisions on Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Joey Bosa, and Khalil Mack because that's where most of the money's at because of the previous regime trading JC Jackson's awful contract away, ate up a lot of the cap room that they got to make some tough decisions on now. So, like, there's that aspect of it. So, I mean, I'm obviously keeping tabs on those guys. Next guy I'm keeping tabs on, but he's going to be expensive, is going to be Josh Allen from the Jaguars. Now, the biggest reason you're keeping tabs on him is because he performed, in my opinion, he performed his best under Joe Cullen, who was his defensive coordinator at the time, who would be his D line coach here. Joe Cullen could bring out the premier edge rusher in him if anybody is going to. Because if Joe Cullen can't do it, nobody's gonna be able to do it. So that's just kind of the reality on that one. And like, I mean, he still has the premium acceleration, the bend and closing speed that got him drafted where it did. Um, and like I said, he's gonna get paid on the open market, and he's got quick hands. He can disengage while bending and rip through a defender. And above all else, I felt like the Jaguar scheme wasted his pass rushing ability. The amount of times they dropped him in coverage, I'm like, why? He's your best pass rusher. What are you dropping him in coverage for? Just know he's good in coverage because he played linebacker. At I believe at Kentucky when he's coming out. But like, I'm like you guys wasted him so many times. Now his teammate that I am going to pull up here in a second is sorry about that. Dwayne Smoot. He was going to be a free agent last year, or yeah, he's going to be a free agent a year or two ago. Tore his Achilles in one of the games, and before he's headed into free agency, and he was having a strong year with Joe Cullen. Like he was having a really, really good year with Joe Cullen. And then after that Achilles thing, I was like, oh boy. But he's still got really good straight line speed. He's still got good bull rush power. He's still finding his way back from the Achilles and what he had lateral quickness wise. Because some of the lateral quickness he had when he could either run down the line or be able to do a twist or a stunt, like was really good. And that before the Achilles, but that kind of took that away from him. And so I feel like it's still a work in progress. And if the Chiefs did get him, I think Joe Cullen believes that he can kind of help him work his way back to who he was under him. So like if the Chiefs do, I'm not going to be upset about it. I feel like Smoot is another guy who could do part of Mike Dana's role as is and do it at an effective cost, if that makes sense. You're not going to ask him to start, uh, but there's that. Next guy, I was really surprised by, and I think he could be sneaky good for him. And I'm going to pronounce his name wrong from the Panthers. It's going to be, I believe it's Chris Montos.
Something
He,
like that.
yes, he's got a lot of athletic promise that wasn't being fully utilized in Carolina. Like his change of direction whenever he's coming down to crash on a run and then he sees a bootleg and just accordingly and accelerates right into it. Like it's right on there with like some of the Chiefs defenders that can effectively do it right now athletically, like he's right on par with them. So that would actually be an upgrade in that regard in terms of part of their defensive end. He crashes hard down the line when he has to. After he sees that the ball is with the ball carrier, he will come down 100 miles an hour on the backside pursuit and he makes the tackle a lot of the time just because of the pure effort and hustle ability that he has. Um, he needs where I think he's struggling in the NFL, and what he needs a good D line coach like Joe Cullen that can help him come up with what you'd call a pass rushing plan. So whenever you need a second or third move, you can do it. So when that first move doesn't work, that you can adjust accordingly to it. Like he's like, all right, I'm going to do this rush on this play. We're going to keep it. It's not working, but I'm going to keep chugging along, and it didn't work. But like that's kind of the big one for me is he, he needs to keep he needs to become a pass rusher that's more unpredictable for offensive linemen. And the bull rush is his favorite. That's his go-to move. But like I'm saying, he has a lot of untapped potential that if Colin could get him to kind of work on those and kind of combine them together, I think he becomes a sneaky good sign for him. Like to where he could elevate what they already have in terms of defense, create good competition, create good effort. But I think that's what's separating him from kind of being a household name and me being able to definitively 100% know I pronounced him correctly.
I'm fascinated in, oddly enough, the two names that I've heard mentioned to the Chiefs,
Uh-huh.
and bizarrely enough, on the betting lines, if you want to bet on where free agents want to go, and I can't, by the way, think of anything worse to bet on than where free agents are going to sign with, because how
Hmm.
in the world are you going to be able to dig into the mind of that? But that aside, um, two names and kind of opposite ends of the cost spectrum and the age spectrum. One is Danielle Hunter, and the
Hmm.
other is Chase Young. I mean, there's nothing specific linking the Chiefs to both, but the Chiefs are amongst the supposedly favorites in both those races. I mean, I know, hey, the Chiefs supposedly been interested in Daniel Hunter before.
Hmm.
Chase Young to me fits in that category. Maybe he's still young enough that you got him with Joe Cullen. Maybe you can harness that talent. I mean, does anything, because those both those guys are going to cost a little money, Nick.
Yeah, with Chase Young, I feel like there was probably some intrigue there last year around training camp
Yep.
potentially, but you weren't going to trade for it. I mean, I think after he had that knee injury, he's never really been what he was again coming out of college. And there's athletic ability there. There's some pass rushing ability there. There's a little bit of strength there, but the fact the 49ers aren't going to re-sign him after trading for him kind of tells me that they don't like the competitive nature more than anything else and how often he's okay with not winning the battle and accepting that. And I think that's kind of where that's why I think he'll end up hitting the open market is because the competitiveness has seemed a little lacking. And so for the Chiefs, the question becomes for Joe Cullen, can I tap into what he showed coming out of college from Ohio State, if I remember correctly at this point? And can we get him to that level? If I can't, then you know, you don't want to invest a heavy amount of money into him, like you said. And then with Daniel Hunter, Hunter he's got long arms, got really long arms, and those are kind of the number one thing that stood out to me whenever there was a potential he's going to be a free agent last year or the year before. I can't remember as my years are blending together at this point, but I remember he was potentially going to come out and then he got a new deal with the Vikings and or they worked something out restructure wise or extension wise and he was able to come back. But yeah, with Daniel Hunter, I mean, like he had the athletic ability, he had the long arms, and he could have made a difference a couple years ago for the Chiefs. But at this point, I think, like you said, you're going to be paying a premium for who he was, not necessarily who he might be at this point. And so I don't, I wouldn't want to pay top dollar. But boy, if you can get any of those guys in that 5 million or below range, sign me up. Let's create some competition. Let's see where things go. Last guy I'll bring up pass rushing to close this out. Uh, Cleveland Farrell, previously the Raiders, and was with the 49ers this past year. He's still got good acceleration. He's got solid lateral quickness. Um, his problem is just like we talked about another guy. He sticks with one rush on the play, and that's what was his problem with the Raiders, and that's his problem here. Is like he's either got what I call a stab move and extend his arm and just keep him at bay, and then try to either push him in the quarterback or maybe work around him, or he does a bull rush with a little bit of a rip move, and like that's kind of what he does. He doesn't have a ton of power and he doesn't have a ton of counters. He's got what I just told you, and that's kind of what he works with, and that's his wheelhouse of what he's comfortable with. But he far too often he tries to routinely win with speed. He doesn't combine speed and power, and he doesn't, he's not trying to do all the hand fighting to be able to do it. He's like, these are my moves. This is what got me to here. This is what got me this check, and this is what we're going to keep doing. So with him being a former first round pick, if I remember correctly, with the Raiders, like Brett Veach is never, what I'm saying? Brett Veach really passes up this former first rounder lottery tickets that he can get for cheap. So it'll be interesting to kind of see. But I mean, Matt, that's pretty much the whole free agent list that I've been able to get through and work through. And yeah, that's what I got for you.
Okay, you know me. I mean, I'm once again,
Yeah.
it may just the nature that the Chiefs have put me into this position where they're so strapped for cash
Yeah.
that I just instantly go for, okay, who is the most intriguing cheap option? So I'm doing it again at edge rusher, Nick. I got
That's
one
fine.
more guy for you.
That's fine.
Not gonna crash the bank here. Not gonna, and I mean, and statistics wise, actually arguably is as good, if not better, than Charles Omenihu was. AJ Epinesa.
Yes. Um, so I did watch his tape, and the Bills used him as a rotational guy. And I was hoping because of his age and where he's at, I'm like, hey,
Still pretty
there
young.
there it is right there. He's a rotational guy, maybe underappreciated. Maybe they can work something out with him. Um, the two key knocks I had on him was how little power he had as a pass rusher. I was kind of disappointed with that, and I was hoping he'd have quicker hands whenever he's trying to disengage from an offensive lineman than what he did. He looked better as a stand-up rusher, kind of more a wide nine stand-up rusher. And he looks better whenever he's trying to accelerate out as a stand-up rusher than when he has his hand in the dirt, which I was also kind of surprised about. Um, he he's okay with getting reach blocked, and that kind of bothered me. Like, once somebody reached him, he's like, no, I guess I'm done with the play. And I'm like, no, ball carrier's still not to you yet. Maybe, maybe fight through that, like rip the, smack and rip through it, do something. And he wouldn't do it. And so, like, that's why the Bills, in my opinion, kind of used him as a rotational rusher to eat up some snaps on downs they didn't think were important. And then when the key downs came with key pass rushers, well, he's out. And there, and that's part of the reason. Like he probably had that interception on Mahomes is because Wanye Morris is one back so far and so wide that, and Evan S is like, hey, I'm already stand up anyways, and oh, there's the ball, I'm gonna smack it. So he happened to be in the right place at the right time versus kind of like that was a really heads up play. Like that guy knew what was coming and did it. And so yeah, no, it don't get me wrong, Matt. I was hoping to like him. Don't I was hoping to find some of those value buys too. And then I'd watch him and I'm like, oh no, it's not there. So yeah, that's all I got on that one.
Well, it's all academic anyway, because, especially if the Chiefs, hey, if they were able to move up in the first round, I mean, it should be a foregone conclusion. Darius Robinson is who they should pick.
Hmm.
I mean, this guy was built to be a Joe Cullen defensive lineman.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm on team Darius Robinson, and not just because he's in my Z.
Yeah. I mean, we're already 90 minutes in the podcast anyways at this point, our longest one to date. But there's a lot of information here. Um, yeah, what was your experience like in Indy? What did you take away from Indianapolis and being there at the combine?
Yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind trip because I was there primarily for Andy Reid and for Brett Veach's availabilities. I was there long enough to be able to see the defensive linemen going through their interviews and some of the linebackers, and no doubt, I mean, Darius Robinson absolutely was the highlight of day one. in more ways than one. I mean, on the podium, off the podium. I mean, he was impressive all across the board. That guy's just personality. I mean, he is absolutely, and you could see it asking Tyron Hopper, one of his teammates at Mizzou. I mean, that guy's an energy giver. I mean, he's absolutely everything that you kind of see in a Willie Gay. I think he's got the flexibility of a Mike Dana with, I think, a tremendous amount of upside. His two favorite NFL players are Max Crosby and Chris Jones. So, I mean, what's more to love? And then he starts rattling off, and Andy Reid, goat, defensive coordinator, goat, defensive line coach, goat. He loves Kansas City, so there's no doubt the Chiefs have talked to him, and he's on board. I am, and and I talked about this on Sunday Sound Off for about 13 seconds a couple of weeks ago. Um, I think you're starting to see the cracks in the combine because I mean, if I'm a first round pick, maybe even a second round pick, if I'm a day one or day two pick, I don't know why I would go to the combine because the only thing that you can do is drive your stock down. I mean, you can just drive the interest that teams have in you down by having a bad performance, by just being in an uncomfortable environment. And no, that is an uncomfortable environment. It's not the gym that these guys always work out in. Why wouldn't you just put your best effort out to your pro day? Especially if you're a quarterback or a receiver. I'm not going to Indianapolis and throwing balls to guys I've never met before or catching passes from a quarterback I've never worked with before. That to me is just absolutely high risk insane. I don't know why anybody does it. And the fact that so many of the players, and now we're getting some really big names who aren't even doing interviews and medicals, because I mean, that's a way that if you're a big name and you're a first round talent, if you don't want to go to a certain team, just stiff arm them. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of the Eli Manning strategy on steroids now. I mean, if I mean, because we see it before. I mean, plenty of teams have taken players. Chiefs have taken players that they've never talked to before. I mean, you'll ask, sometimes there'll be a sixth round guy and you'll say, "Hey, when did you talk to the Chiefs?" I never talked to them. Maybe a scout, maybe an area scout was out there and talked to him one day and he forgot about that. But you're not going to take a first round pick with a guy unless you've like really invested some time and talking to
Mhm.
them and everything, and their medicals. But now you got guys who will pick and choose which team that they give the medicals to, and they will pick and choose which teams that they talk to. I mean, yeah, if you don't want to go to a terrible team, don't interview with them. I mean, it's a great way. I don't know. I mean, to me, I mean, I think that the medicals and the way that Indianapolis does it and the way they got it set up, I mean, that's ensured that the combine won't move. I mean, they do such a good job with it. When you're talking about, that's the thing that people don't get. I mean, when you're talking about having 300 players come through and you're talking about getting x-rays and doing all of the physical tests, I mean, it's not a physical like you do at your doctor's office. I
Mhm.
mean, these are in depth. I mean, they're doing MRIs, they're doing all these things on past injuries. Obviously, they do heart tests because we've seen players who've had absolutely critical, life-threatening conditions that have been found at the combine. So
Right.
it's not ordinary. But the process of getting 300 players through that process in less than a week
Mhm.
and their ability to do it, not other cities can replicate that. So the
Right.
combine to me, I don't think will ever go anywhere, even though the NFL wants to shop it around for money. But I just think it's going to have decreasing value.
Right.
And especially even the podiums. I mean, you got guys talking about whether birds exist or not. I mean, all you're almost at the whim of some crazy shock jock that wanders into the combine one day to ask a bizarre question, and next thing you know, your client is, on the front page for the wrong reasons. I mean, I just see the combine increasingly becoming very high risk, but that's my scenic detour on the combine, Nick, my rant about the combine.
Hey, it's what you learned at the combine. So I mean, yeah, it's a
But
part of that list.
but I mean, once again, it kind of got the message, from the Chiefs that, yeah, I would still be very surprised if they're hyper active in the first 48 hours of free agency. I mean, we could be very surprised, but all the indications that I got were that Sneed and Jones are, and let's say addressing them are their top two priorities. I mean, because obviously now that it looks increasingly like they may consider a trade for Legarius,
Mm.
just resolving his situation, I think is the paramount way to put it. I don't think that they really want to wait until the draft
Mm.
to address the Legarius situation. That's obviously possible, but that's not the way that you get the most value in a trade, anything of that nature. I mean, really, if the Chiefs make a big splash in the first 48 hours of free agency, I would think that it would be involving a trade for Sneed.
Mhm.
It could involve getting a deal done with Chris Jones, but is it going to be spending $20 million on somebody else? I just don't see it. I mean, and last year they were early and got a deal done with Charles Omenihu, but that was not what I would call a big ticket deal.
Mhm.
I mean, that was relatively lower price. So I could certainly see them being in that ballpark. But the Chiefs seem to be really interested in just, maybe catching the top of the wave of the next wave. You know, it's who slipped out of the first wave of free agency that's available in the second wave at maybe a lower price than they would have 2 days ago, or who's in the third wave that a week ago could have been going for more money.
Mhm.
I mean, I would imagine that at the end of this, we're going to look back and say that the Chiefs' most significant free agent additions are going to be a lot like last year. It's going to be like a Drew Tranquil and a Mike Edwards. It's not going to be a big name that they're signing out of the box. But with a free agency, you never know, Nick. I mean,
Mhm.
Brett Veach could be playing his cards very, very close to the chest, and maybe he's got designs on spending $100 million on Christian Wilkinson for all I know.
Well, I think if they're getting I think if they're getting Christian Wilkins, then Chris Jones isn't a Chief anymore.
That would be true.
So yeah, but if they do lose out on Chris Jones, then I think that's where, depending on what happens with Matabike or Wilkins, I think that's where they will have to dip their toe quicker than they probably wanted to, um, in a defensive tackle, one way or another. So yeah, I think what Chris Jones does, I think kind of hinges on where they're gonna have to pivot in terms of getting somebody who can be in the ballpark of where he is, not the same player, obviously, but can get in his ballpark. But if you get Chris Jones back, then yeah, I don't think that I don't think free agency is going to be crazy spending money here and there for the Chiefs.
And I'll offer one more, observation
Yeah.
from the combine, and that was dealing with Andy Reid, and especially with all of the end of the season rumors about whether he was going to retire because
Mhm.
some idiot blogger puts it out there. Um,
Did you see that he went on set with the
I
individual that started the
I
whole?
did see that.
Yeah,
Yes, it was much more cordial than I would have been.
yeah. I was surprised. Andy's a professional. Props to
Well, I can guarantee you he doesn't read his work, so that probably helps.
him.
But
Mhm.
I digress. But you could probably see it in the interview. It was certainly evident in person. I mean, the difference that winning that Super Bowl and the end of the season makes, and maybe a week in California for Andy at his house does. That man looked like he lost 20 pounds and 5 years since the last time I saw him at the Super Bowl. I mean, that's just tells you what the season does to you and how much he's invested in it, and what he puts into it. I mean, it only took like 2.5 weeks for Andy Reid to look like, he's hasn't been in the football game for 6 months. I mean, he just looked
Right.
like a completely different guy, and it was so happy to see. I mean, because he
Yeah.
was he was in the best mood I have seen him in a long time.
I You win 3 Super Bowls. I can help out.
Yeah, I can only imagine if he gets a three-peat next year, how happy he'd be at the combine.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we have exhausted the free agency, and I
Yeah.
if the Chiefs actually sign somebody we haven't mentioned at any of these positions, I will be very, very surprised, Nick. See,
Yeah, I
because
think I mean, maybe they get somebody for cheap or whatnot, but I'm trying to get us under hour 45 at this point on the podcast. So
well, everyone, I mean,
we're gonna have to wrap this up, Matt.
I have been told that a number of our proud listeners are listening at 1.5 speed now to get through it a little bit faster. So
That's my
maybe
bad.
maybe we'll start breaking them up into 2 episodes. Who knows? But we will be back next week on your feed with 41 as the mic. Be back on Chiefs Digest Tuesday night for the live Q&A, which I will once again try to coerce Nick into joining me because
I will tell you in advance I will be unable to attend that one.
darn. Okay, well, it'll just be me on Tuesday, so
Yep.
we'll see what happens. But like I said, once again, we'll see you back here next week. We will continue diving in because next week, Nick, we will be on the eve of the legal tampering period which I hate calling it that, so we will call it the negotiation window.
Yes.
And we will be on the brink of free agency and the league new year. So
Until next time, I bid you adieu, Matt.